I'm Amber Long, and I'm here to give my testimony. I've grown up in church my whole life. I was baptized when I was 8, and during school I was actively serving in church. I'd help with kids. I enjoyed helping run the slides for worship. And so through school, I had a decently solid faith. I was reading my Bible pretty regularly and going to church and just being active. And so my senior year of high school, I kind of started to fall off from that. I quit making that time to read my Bible. I was still involved, but I didn't have that almost every day reminder of who Jesus was. In my transition from going in the high school youth group to being more of a young adult, because we didn't have a college ministry, I was hurt by a misunderstanding, and through that, I started attending church as something more that I had to do because it was expected of me, whereas I not attending because I wanted to be there. And kind of with that, part of maybe because I lived at home is I didn't feel like I had as many friends, and I just didn't feel like I was anyone's priority. I had never been in a romantic relationship, and that was something that I really craved. In college, I bought an e-reader. I am a romantic at heart. I started off reading, Christian romances, but as time went on, I started reading more sexually driven romances, and it got to the point where I started reading literary porn. And having grown up in church, I knew that this was wrong, but it gave me that sense of belonging and hope and an importance, and it made me feel wanted. The high would go away, though, after a period of time, and I'd end up just feeling shame, because all through high school, it had been pounded into our heads like, sex is great inside a marriage, but if it's not, don't think about it, don't talk about it, don't do it. And so having that mindset kind of made me struggle with wanting to share my struggles with people, and I just didn't want to be judged. And one thing is, especially with my parents, I didn't want to be a disappointment. I kept crying out, God, help me. This isn't me. Why am I doing this? God, take this one away from me. But I would then turn away and keep living my life. And so then I'd come back to God, help me, what is wrong with me? It felt like for a time that it was getting better. I was choosing God, I was going to church regularly, and then something would happen, and I would go running back to those thoughts of being unwanted and not being important, and in all reality just fall back into something that had become my addiction. Through that, I started not wanting to go to church and not wanting to have that relationship with God, and I ended up building a wall around my heart, and I also felt like God couldn't love me because of my sin. So about a year and a half ago, I moved to Evansville, and the first 6 months were really hard because I moved away from everyone I knew, and I was really, truly alone. And so my feelings were just in full force. And so I turned to what was my refuge. I knew someone around because I knew that I was supposed to be going to church, and I text actually Maria Hensley, and I was like, hey girl, so I just moved to the area, where are you going to church? I need to go. And so because I knew that if I tried to shop around, I wouldn't go. So I came, and it was good. But there were weeks where I would be exhausted and I couldn't get out of bed. But then Joel and Maria, they started a small group. There were a couple people in it. It was kind of small. But the thing is I was able to create those friendships. And there were some Sundays I didn't get up to go to church, but I went to small group. And then I started forcing myself to volunteer. And because of that, I was able to start going to church rather regularly. I went to church that Sunday and I let myself worship, and I felt God for the first time in a very long time. With that came, I started paying attention to sermons, and I've started cracking open my Bible again. Over the last year, I've begun to develop a relationship with Jesus, and I still fall short of God's glory, but I am actively pursuing a life of holiness and pursuing accountability. I believe that with community that God has put in my life and my growing relationship with Him, I will overcome this, because in God there is freedom.